My mom's new aviation consultant boyfriend moved in 2 months after Dad's plane vanished, tried erasing him and getting me committed. So I used Dad's flight logs to ruin his entire career. The day Victor Crane first came into our lives, I was sitting on the porch pretending to do homework while chain-smoking a pack of Marlboros I'd stolen from my uncle's garage. My phone was in my lap, open to a message I had typed out but never sent. Just another "miss you, Dad" to a number that hadn't pinged back in 2 months. My name's Alex. I'm 15. I live in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. 2 months ago, my dad's plane vanished somewhere off the coast of Bermuda. They called it a freak weather event, a rare pressure anomaly, whatever that meant. But I never believed he was gone. Not really. My mom did. She cried for 3 days straight. Then she stopped crying and started decorating. New throw pillows. A healing playlist she'd play at night. And then Victor showed up. He was some kind of aviation grief consultant, whatever that is, recommended by a friend of a friend. At least, that's what she told me. But I didn't trust him. Something about his teeth. Too white, too straight. The way he looked at our house like it was already his. A week after meeting him, my mom invited him over for dinner. 2 weeks later, he was reorganizing the living room. By week 3, he had moved in. Just like that. He started small. Grief decluttering, he called it. First went the framed photos of my dad in his flight gear. Then his medals. His vintage flight simulator joystick, thrown in a donation box like it was some piece of junk. I walked in one day to find Victor sorting through Dad's old logbooks. "These are outdated," he said without looking up. "We should keep moving forward." Moving forward. That was his favorite line. He said it so often my mom started parroting it back like it was gospel. Every time I pushed back, she'd tell me I was stuck in the past. Like hanging onto the memory of my father made me broken. Victor slithered into everything. He started using Dad's home simulator setup, renamed the room the Wellness Wing, and installed some dumb sound machine that played ocean waves and chimes. He even wore my dad's leather flight jacket. Said it helped him feel connected. I snapped the day I found him sitting in the simulator chair, wearing Dad's headset like he owned the sky. "Take that off," I said, trying not to scream. He turned around slowly, smiled. "Alex, I know this is hard, but holding onto objects doesn't bring people back. Your father would want you to let go." Let go? He didn't get to say what my dad would want. He didn't know anything. My mom kept saying Victor was helping us, that his gourmet cooking and guided meditation playlists were part of healing the trauma. All I saw was a man erasing my father one artifact at a time. I didn't argue anymore. Arguing didn't help. She'd just look at me like I was some unstable case study. So I nodded and went upstairs, lit a cigarette by the window, and texted Dad's number like I always did. "Miss you. Things are weird. I'll figure it out. I promise." No reply. Never a reply. But I sent it anyway. Because even if everyone else moved on, I wasn't letting go. Not yet. Not ever. It started with the curtains. One afternoon, I came home from school to find the windows in Dad's study covered with thick blackout panels that made the whole room look like a crime scene. Gone were the pale blue drapes my mom used to tie back with ribbons. Now it looked like a sensory deprivation chamber. Victor stepped out from behind the desk, holding a potted succulent. "Alex," he said, "welcome to the new Zen Denver." I didn't say anything. Just stood there, backpack still slung over one shoulder, staring at the empty walls where Dad's flight maps used to hang. Instead, there was a poster that said flow, not force. Another one. Breathe. Detach. Rise. In bold, sans serif font. "What did you do with his books?" I asked. Victor gestured toward a sealed cardboard box in the hallway. "Your mom and I agreed. Too much emotional density in this room. We needed to reset the energy." I walked out without a word. Upstairs, I heard them laughing in the kitchen. Her laugh. Like she was finally light again. Like she didn't remember how Dad used to sit in that office with his coffee and mark up charts at 2 a.m. The next few weeks were a blur of transformation. Our house went from home to Instagram therapy loft. Every room started smelling like eucalyptus. All the framed photos of Dad got replaced with abstract paintings and more quotes about energy alignment. Even the fridge was stocked with weird health foods, things like raw cashew cheese and brain fog-clearing elixirs. My mom started dressing differently, too. Flowy cardigans. Barefoot around the house. She got rid of her makeup bag and started saying stuff like authentic skin and frequency matching. One night, I overheard her on the phone saying she felt like her grief skin had finally shed. I wanted to scream. At school, things weren't any better. I stopped hanging out with most of my friends. Part of it was me. I didn't want to talk. Didn't want to explain why my mom's new boyfriend kept showing up to school meetings in linen pants and talking about emotional rewiring. But the other part? Everyone started looking at me like I was the unstable one. Teachers pulled me aside more than once. "Is everything okay at home?" Ms. Jenkins asked during art class. I shrugged. Define okay. My mom started skipping parent conferences. Said she needed inner work, time, and began attending these weekend retreats Victor organized at some place he called the Stillness Resort. I Googled it once. It had an infrared sauna shaped like an egg and a yoga dome that looked like a greenhouse. One Saturday, Victor invited me to the local airfield. Said he wanted to connect through shared hobbies. I should have said no. When I got there, he pulled Dad's old RC planes out of the trunk, like they were his. "This one was your dad's favorite, right?" he asked, holding up the yellow Cessna. "Let's get it in the air." For closure. I felt something snap inside me. Watching him handle that remote with his perfectly moisturized hands, acting like this was his ritual, his grief. When the plane finally took off, smooth and clean, I turned and walked away, sat on the bench and covered my face. I didn't cry often, but that time, I did. Victor found me a few minutes later. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed," he said, like he was some licensed expert on my pain. "Your emotions aren't a problem, they're portals." I didn't respond. I just lit a cigarette right there on the bench, even though I knew it would piss him off. He didn't say anything, just walked back to the car, leaving the plane circling above us like some plastic ghost. Then came Dad's birthday. I had secretly arranged for a small memorial flyover. One of his old friends from the airstrip had agreed to do it, a short pass over our house with smoke trails and Dad's colors. But when the day came, the sky was empty. Victor had canceled it. "We're hosting a candlelight yoga vigil at Stillness that night," he told me, as if that was a perfectly normal substitute. "Your mom said it would be more healing." More healing? I looked at him and saw it clearly. He wasn't just taking over the house. He was rewriting the story. My story. My dad's story. And he was almost done convincing everyone it was for our own good. It was just after 2 in the morning when I crept downstairs with a screwdriver and a flashlight. The drawer in Victor's desk had been locked since the week he moved in. I tried a bobby pin once, but no luck. This time, I was serious. It took 10 minutes and some careful prying, but eventually the latch gave way. I slid the drawer open, barely breathing. Inside were 2 neat stacks of papers, receipts, printed emails, and a spiral-bound notebook with tabs labeled expenses, clients, and inventory. I pulled out the receipts first. They looked like boring purchase records, organic cleaning supplies, a drone camera, travel expenses for his mindfulness events. And then I saw it. A flight headset ordered through Aerotech Pilot Supplies, paid for with a credit card in my father's name. Date: 2 weeks after the crash. My heart thudded. I rifled through more papers. Another charge, an airfield refueling service in Miami. Again, Dad's card. Same last 4 digits I recognized from helping him fill up the fuel logs. I sat back on my heels, suddenly cold all over. Dad's card should have been frozen. The airline's recovery team had gone through everything. If someone was still using it, someone who had access to his wallet, or to him. I didn't sleep. I didn't even go back upstairs. I just sat in the dark at the kitchen table until sunrise, the receipts spread out in front of me like a puzzle only I could solve. That afternoon, I skipped school and took the bus to my Uncle Garrett's office. He used to be a state cop, but now he ran a small security firm out of a strip mall next to a vape shop. He squinted at me as I walked in. "Alex? What the hell?" I dumped the papers onto his desk. "Victor's using Dad's credit card," I said. "After the crash. He says Dad's gone, but someone's still spending his money." Garrett went quiet. He thumbed through the stack, slower now. I checked the dates, I added. "It lines up. Someone was buying aviation gear. Fuel. A flight tower service in Florida." Garrett looked at me carefully. "Alex, I thought you were in treatment out west." I blinked. "What?" He reached into his drawer and pulled out a file folder. Inside were printed emails and appointment confirmations. "Your mom sent out a notification 3 weeks ago. Said you were enrolled in intensive trauma recovery in Arizona. That you wouldn't be reachable." "That's not true," I said, stunned. "I've been here the whole time. I haven't been in school much." He looked genuinely shaken. "Your mom told the school. Told the security board, too, when I asked about accessing tower footage." "What footage?" Garrett turned to his monitor and pulled up a login screen. I was curious. "Your dad's plane was reported lost, right? But when I looked at refueling logs from the night before, it showed a refuel time at 11:53 p.m. in Key Largo. That's hours after the supposed disappearance." He clicked through to a video feed. It was grainy, low-res security footage from a tarmac. And there it was, Dad's tail number. You could see him step out of the cockpit. He looked tired, sweaty, alive. But there was someone else with him. The other person wore a hoodie pulled up tight. No visible face, but their build, their walk. I felt it in my gut. It was Victor. Right then, the door burst open. My mom stood there, holding a tray of coffees. Victor followed behind her, calm as ever, phone already in hand. "Alex," she said in that sing-song voice she used when I was little. "You didn't tell me you were coming here." Garrett stood, half shielding me. Victor's voice was smooth. "We were just concerned. You've been spiraling lately. Your mom told me you've been having episodes again." He turned to his phone and started dialing. "Who are you calling?" Garrett asked. "Just wellness officers," Victor replied. "They'll come and make sure Alex is safe. You know, with everything that's going on." "No," I said, stepping back. "Don't." But they weren't listening to me anymore. Within minutes, the front lawn was flooded with light from police cruisers and a mental health crisis unit. The neighbors came out to watch. I stood in the grass with Garrett beside me, screaming that Victor was lying. Victor just smiled. "She's scared," he said, putting a hand on my mom's shoulder. "She doesn't know how to help him anymore." "But I do." My mom nodded. She didn't look at me. "Alex needs help," she said softly. "He's confused." And just like that, I became the delusional kid who couldn't let go. But I knew what I saw, and I wasn't about to let it go either. After the lawn incident, I stopped fighting. At least on the outside. I went quiet. Said I understood. Played the part of the damaged teen, too confused to know real from fake. They called it a breakthrough when I agreed to start online therapy again. Victor even congratulated me at dinner. But behind their backs, I was collecting everything. I remember Dad's smart home obsession, the old gear he installed before it was cool. A dusty security cam above the front porch. A thermostat app he'd once let me program from his laptop. Most of it was disconnected, but not all. One night while Victor was out, leading a grief circle, I plugged in Dad's backup drive from the basement. It hummed to life like it had been waiting. Within an hour, I found partial feeds still accessible through a local IP footage from the hallway cam that overlooked my bedroom door. What I saw made my skin crawl. There was Victor, coming into my room while I slept. 3 different nights. He'd walk in quietly, check my desk drawers, lift the corner of my mattress, even leaf to the notebooks I kept on my bookshelf. One night, he stood there for a full 2 minutes, just watching me breathe. He held his phone in front of him like he was taking inventory. I saved all the footage. Backed it up twice. Then I changed the camera's admin password and left the feed running. If he came back, I'd know. At school, things got worse. Teachers I barely knew started pulling me aside with soft voices and tight smiles. "Alex, is there something you want to talk about?" They never said who complained. But I knew. It was Victor. He was painting me as unstable, untrustworthy, probably dangerous. Even kids who used to talk to me at lunch began backing off. One of them, Mia, had given me notes after I missed class for 2 weeks. Now she avoided eye contact like I was contagious. I found out later that someone had emailed the school anonymously, warning them about her unusual proximity to a known trauma case. They called it a safety concern. Victor had reach. More than I thought. He wasn't just playing therapist anymore. He had taken over my dad's estate, appointed as temporary executor after Mom gave him proxy rights to reduce stress. That meant he controlled everything. The pilot trust fund, the legal correspondences, even access to Dad's flight insurance claims. And me? He coordinated my therapy, scheduled my sessions, reviewed my behavior with concern. I saw the files on the shared computer, notes labeled Alex, regression triggers, as if I was some project he was troubleshooting. Then one morning, I opened my locker and found a note. "I see what you're doing. Stop." Typed. Plain paper. No name. That same day, the school counselor called me in. Said they received a report claiming I had written threatening messages to myself. The note had been submitted by Victor, framed as a possible cry for help. I stared at the paper on her desk and felt rage boil up in my chest. Victor was creating the story he needed. Every piece of evidence I gathered, he twisted into proof that I was unraveling. But I wasn't breaking. I was watching, and I was going to burn his whole house of lies down. From the inside, I stopped pretending I was okay the day I caught Emma lying. Emma, my little cousin, only 9, used to be the one person in the house I didn't have to fake it around. But then she started asking weird questions, things no kid her age would come up with on her own. "Alex, where do you hide your notes? Did you talk to Uncle Victor today? He said he wants to help your sadness go away." I asked her where she heard that stuff. She giggled and said it was part of a game she was playing with Victor. "He says I'm like a spy," she whispered, proud. "But not a scary one. A helper." I didn't yell. I didn't scare her. I just nodded, gave her a cookie, and went upstairs to scream silently into my pillow. Victor was turning the kid into a plant, using her to spy on me. I couldn't keep up. I barely slept. I kept checking over my shoulder, hiding flash drives and cereal boxes, erasing my browser history like my life depended on it. Because it did. The surveillance footage, the financial documents, the altered legal filings, I had it all. But it wasn't enough. People still believed Victor. My own mother did. And now Emma? That nearly broke me. Mom sat in her meditation room, now more than she cooked. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she'd murmur something about resonant healing and leave the room. She'd given up on me the same way she'd given up on the truth. And Victor had filled the vacuum. They even talked about sending me away again, this time to a real facility. Victor had a list. He said they specialized in male youth reprocessing. It sounded like prison with scented candles. So I got desperate. One night, I went down into the garage where Dad kept his old maintenance kits. I figured maybe there was an old key or thumb drive stashed somewhere. Anything. I pulled the red toolbox off the shelf, and underneath was a tiny black case, duct taped to the underside of the workbench. Inside, a USB drive, written in Sharpie across the surface, in my dad's sharp, all-caps handwriting. If I vanish. I sat there in the freezing garage, staring at it like it was the last light in a blackout. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. Password protected. I tried my birthday. Nothing. Tried his call sign, Ghostbird1. Still nothing. I stared at the password screen for 15 minutes, whispering guesses into the dark. I almost gave up, until I remembered something Dad said the night before his last flight. We were in the simulator room, and I asked why he always named his flight routes after birds. He'd laughed and said, because birds don't lie. They go where the wind tells them. You know what you can always trust, Alex? Your coordinates. I typed in the GPS coordinates of the airfield he left from that day. Accepted. The screen filled with files, audio recordings, flight logs, document scans. And at the top, a folder labeled Crane. I clicked. There were voice memos. One with a date less than 2 weeks before the crash. I hit play. This is Dan Whitmore. It's Friday night, and Victor Crane just left my office. He forged a trauma counselor license to bill 3 different insurance carriers. I called him on it. He threatened to report me for harassment. I think he's tracking my movements. I slammed the laptop shut, breathing hard. Victor wasn't just a manipulator. He was a fraud. A dangerous one. I had what I needed now. But if he found out I had it, he wouldn't just ruin me. He'd bury me. And this time, everyone would believe he was right. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bedroom floor with my back against the door, laptop glowing, headphones in, listening to my dad's voice over and over. His tone wasn't panicked. It was measured. Like he knew what he was doing. Like he knew someone might need to hear this later, if something happened. If he vanished. The USB was filled with files that told a story, piece by piece. And once I started putting them together, I couldn't stop. There were more voice memos. One from a week before the crash. He came back today. Crane. He says he's trying to help families heal, but he asked for access to my pilot credentials. Said it would help him manage some legacy paperwork. I told him no. He smiled and said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." There were spreadsheets showing wire transfers Dad had set up to separate accounts, one in my name, one in Mom's, hidden behind shell corporations. I cross-referenced the dates with the crash. Every transfer happened within 3 days of that last flight. Then there were the flight path files. I opened the KML logs from Dad's personal GPS tracker, his little black backup device he used to call the breadcrumb box. It was there, proof that his final route wasn't what the official report claimed. He never went down near Bermuda. He veered south, landed in Key Largo, and then the data stopped. But the last point, the final ping, was at a private airfield owned by a shell company registered to someone named Elias Crane. I had never heard that name before, but the birth date on the registration was Victor's. He'd used an alias, set up a landing strip, hidden it all under layers of red tape and healing hashtags. I printed everything. I made backups, encrypted them, sent copies to a burner email I set up under Garrett's name. Then I walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and looked in the mirror. I looked like a ghost, but I felt more alive than I had in months. That morning, I skipped school and took the bus to the city library, where no one tracked your Wi-Fi history. I submitted the full report, with all documents, audio files, GPS logs, to the National Aviation Licensing Board's whistleblower unit. I didn't add my name. I just typed one sentence. The man known as Victor Crane is a fraud, and a pilot may have died because of it. By noon, I had confirmation. His license was suspended pending investigation. But it didn't stop there. That night, my mom found the printouts hidden under my mattress. I don't know if she read them or if Victor did first, but either way, I came home to a family meeting. Victor sat on the couch, arms crossed. Calm. Always calm. We're worried about your mental state again, he said. It's not safe for you to have access to electronics. My mom just stared at her hands. Victor continued. I've spoken to my legal team. We're filing for full guardianship. We're not trying to punish you. We're trying to protect you. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded. Okay, I said. Do what you need to do. And inside, I started the timer. He had no idea. The files were out there now. And he was about to find out what it felt like to be trapped in someone else's flight path, with no control over where he landed. Victor Crane didn't flinch when the board called his name. He walked into the inquiry room at the National Aviation Licensing Authority headquarters wearing his usual crisp linen shirt and quiet smirk, like he was arriving at a spa instead of a federal hearing. He even winked at the receptionist. I sat 2 rows behind the panel with Uncle Garrett beside me, a thick manila folder in my lap. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. I had waited months for this. The investigator in charge, a woman named Miss Patel, looked up from her file. "Mr. Crane," she said, her voice flat, "please explain why your trauma certification cannot be verified through any national database." Victor didn't miss a beat. "Well, that's simple. My license was issued overseas during a sabbatical in Denmark. There was a clerical error in the digitization process. These things happen." Patel raised an eyebrow. "And your alias, Elias Crane? Also a clerical error." A flicker of irritation passed across his face. That was the first crack. The next 20 minutes were brutal. Every file, every recording, every flight log from the USB. One by one, they laid it all out, not just the faked credentials, but the financial exploitation of clients, the refueling logs, the surveillance footage showing him in our house while I slept. Victor tried to stay composed. He used buzzwords, smiled often, talked about healing modalities and the nuance of alternative licensing frameworks. But then they played the audio. Dad's voice filled the room, steady and clear. "Crane forged therapy records. He's asking for access to flight documents I refuse to share. I've locked down the financials and am logging GPS routes in case something happens." The silence that followed was deep, heavy. Victor opened his mouth to object, but nothing came out. Ms. Patel folded her hands. "Your license is hereby revoked pending full criminal investigation. You are to cease all aviation-related activities effective immediately." Victor stood slowly, adjusting his cuff. "I see," he said. "Well, it's been enlightening." But he didn't get far. The arrest wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No handcuffs in front of reporters. Just 2 plainclothes officers meeting him quietly at the back hallway during his scheduled mindfulness resort promotional event later that day. They walked him out with barely a whisper. News spread fast. My inbox was flooded with headlines. Wellness guru exposed in licensing fraud. Aviation consultant charged in disappearance scheme. Teen's tip leads to criminal probe. But none of that mattered when I got home and found Mom sitting on the floor in the hallway, clutching an old flight photo of Dad and crying into her palms. She looked up at me, eyes red. "Why didn't I see it?" she whispered. "Why didn't I stop him?" I didn't know what to say. She broke down harder when I showed her the final recording, Dad's last message from the USB. He sounded tired but focused. "If you're seeing this, it means I failed to stop him. Alex, protect your mom. Don't let the bastard win." She listened in silence, then curled up against the wall like she'd folded in on herself. I sat beside her for a long time. Later that week, Aunt Ray moved in. She brought groceries, made Emma lunch, and scheduled therapy for both of them. Emma wouldn't look me in the eye at first, but when she finally did, it was with a kind of quiet apology I didn't know a 9-year-old could carry. Victor's empire was gone. My dad's name was being cleared. Our house didn't feel haunted anymore. But I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like breathing. For the first time in months, I could. It was cloudy the day we held the final memorial. No sunshine, no drama, just that soft, gray kind of sky that makes the world feel a little quieter. We stood at the edge of the old municipal airstrip where Dad used to take me on Sundays, back when flying was just a thing we did together. Not a mystery. Not a wound. The hangar still had his initials carved into the side door. I ran my fingers over them as I walked past. Mom stood to my left, eyes glassy but open. Aunt Ray held Emma's hand on the right. Garrett stayed back by the fence, watching like backup. No press. No gawkers. Just us, the way Dad would have wanted. I pulled the folded paper from my jacket and stepped up to the small mic we'd set on the weather-beaten picnic table. My palms were sweating, but I didn't need to read it. I'd memorized every word. I used to think if I held on tight enough, maybe I'd hear his voice again, I said. Maybe the sky would spit him back out. But I realized something. My dad didn't vanish. He left instructions. I looked up, voice steady now. "Protect your mom. Don't let the bastard win." I paused. He didn't say, "Remember me." He said, "Fight." And I did. A breeze kicked up. Somewhere behind me, Emma sniffled. But today isn't about the fight. It's about the flying. The man who taught me how to line up a drone for landing at age 10. The guy who once let me skip school because the sky looked too good to waste. I still remember him holding my hands over the controls and whispering, "Just feel the wind. Let it guide you." I smiled, folded the paper, and stepped back. Mom reached for my hand. I let her take it. When the short service ended, we didn't linger. There wasn't much to say. But before we left, I walked to the simulator room in the back of the hangar. It was dusty, half forgotten. A few old wires hung from the ceiling, and the panels flickered as the system warmed up. But the screen still worked. The joystick still moved like it remembered. I booted up Dad's last saved route. Cherry Hill to Key Largo. I slid on the headset, entered the call sign he always used, Ghostbird 1, and hit launch. The screen lit up, and the simulation took off. For 10 minutes, I flew the exact path my father had taken that final night, tracing every waypoint he logged, every turn he made. It wasn't perfect, the frame lagged, and the sound cut in and out, but it was real enough. At the last marked coordinate, the screen blinked. Landing point reached. Route closed. I took off the headset, hung it back on the hook, and for the first time in a year, I didn't feel like I was chasing a ghost. I felt like I'd flown alongside him, just long enough to let go of the mystery and hold on to the man. We shut the door behind us and walked out together. Me, Mom, Emma, Ray, into a world that finally felt like it could hold us again. Not because he was gone, but because we'd finally brought him home.